What if I told you there's a story in the Bible about Adam and Eve that almost no one talks about? We all know about Cain, Abel, and even Seth, but what about their daughters? Yes, Adam and Eve had daughters too, and their story is one of mystery, untold struggles, and deep lessons about faith and family. In today's video, we're going to uncover the forgotten tale of the daughters of Adam and Eve, and what their lives mean for us as believers today. Trust me, you'll want to stick around because their story holds powerful truths that will surprise you. Have you ever wondered why the Bible barely mentions the daughters of Adam and Eve? Did they live unnoticed, or does their silence in Scripture hold a deeper meaning? In Genesis chapter 5, verse 4, the Bible gives a brief, almost hidden mention. After Seth was born, Adam lived 800 years and had other sons and daughters. That's it. No names, no stories. Why would the daughters of the first humans be left out? This single line raises so many questions. Could their story be more important than we realize? Throughout the Bible, there's a clear focus on male lineage, a pattern that reflects the culture of the time. Men were the heads of households, and inheritance passed through sons. Yet the fact that the daughters aren't named doesn't mean they are unimportant. They played a vital role in early human history. Imagine, these women were part of the first generation, living in a world where everything was new, both good and evil. Their presence was essential in the growth of the human race. Without them, the world could not have been populated. But why the silence? Could it be that their story was so intertwined with everyday life that it didn't need to be explicitly told? In a culture where men were the primary record keepers, women's contributions, though essential, often went unrecorded. Yet, time and time again, the Bible shows us that God sees those who are overlooked. Think of Hagar in Genesis chapter 16, who cried out to God in the wilderness, and he answered. If God saw Hagar, wouldn't he have also seen the daughters of Adam and Eve, even if their names remain hidden? This brings us to the mystery. The Bible doesn't tell us what their lives were like, leaving much to the imagination. Were they deeply affected by their parents' fall from grace? What was it like for them, living in a world where sin was now a part of everyday life? How did they cope with the fact that their brother Cain murdered their other brother Abel? Their silence in the Bible only adds to the mystery, inviting us to think more deeply about their untold struggles and triumphs. The Bible's focus on male lineage does not mean that these daughters were forgotten by God. Their role in building early human civilization was crucial. Without them, there would be no future generations. Genesis chapter 1 verse 28 shows us God's command to be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it. Adam and Eve's daughters were just as much a part of this command as their sons. But what we don't know about these women sparks curiosity. Did they feel the weight of living in a world tainted by sin? Did they long for the paradise their parents spoke of? Though Scripture doesn't provide these answers, their presence in the line of humanity is undeniable. Their silence speaks volumes, challenging us to reflect on the lives of those rarely mentioned but remain vital in God's plan. Have you ever wondered how the daughters of Adam and Eve found husbands in a world where they were among the first humans? The truth may surprise you and challenge your understanding of how life began. In the early days of humanity, the daughters of Adam and Eve likely married their brothers. It's a fact that can be hard to grasp in today's world, but in the context of early humanity, it was necessary for survival. Genesis chapter 1 verse 28 reveals God's command to be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. This meant that the children of Adam and Eve, both sons and daughters, had to populate the earth. Given their limited human population, marriage within the family was the only way to fulfill this divine mandate. This raises moral and social questions that many people struggle with today. Why would God allow siblings to marry? It's important to remember that at this time, humanity was in its purest form. Adam and Eve were created directly by God, and their genetic makeup was perfect, untainted by the effects of sin. Therefore, marrying within the family did not carry the same risks or moral implications it does now. As humanity grew and multiplied, God later set boundaries on marriage to prevent these unions. But in the beginning, It was a part of His plan to ensure humanity's survival and expansion. Other ancient books that provide information about the daughters of Adam and Eve. We have to look beyond the surface of Scripture and explore ancient Jewish traditions to uncover their stories. While the Bible itself doesn't provide many details, these other writings give us a glimpse into who these daughters were and the roles they played in shaping the early world. One of the most fascinating insights comes from the Book of Jubilees, an ancient text that tells the stories of biblical characters in greater detail. This book, often called Little Genesis, gives us the names of Adam and Eve's daughters, who played significant roles in the lineage of humanity. According to this text, the first daughter was named Awan. Awan is a name most people have never heard, but according to the Book of Jubilees and other traditions, she was Adam and Eve's first daughter. More interestingly, Awan was also the wife of Cain, her brother. Genesis chapter 4 verse 17 tells us that Cain had a son named Enoch and built a city, naming it after his son, but the Bible doesn't mention Cain's wife. That's where the ancient traditions come in. Awan is said to have borne children with Cain, continuing the family line despite the tragic death of her brother Abel. Imagine the emotional weight Awan carried, being married to Cain, the first murderer in history. What kind of life must she have lived, knowing the pain her family endured? Awan's story, though not well known, is a powerful reminder of how human history is built on both triumph and tragedy. Her son Enoch would go on to found a city, a significant milestone in human civilization. Yet, Awan's legacy is also tied to the consequences of Cain's sin. This tension between growth and suffering is something we still experience in our own lives today. The Book of Jubilees also introduces us to Adam and Eve's second daughter, Azura. According to these ancient texts, Azura was first married to Abel, but after his death, she became the wife of Seth, the third son of Adam and Eve. Seth is a pivotal figure in the Bible, seen as a divine replacement for Abel after Cain's violent act. Genesis chapter 4 verse 25 says, "God has granted me another child in place of Abel, since Cain killed him." Azura's role is significant because, through her, the line of Seth continued. According to Jewish tradition, she and Seth had a son named Enosh. The Bible mentions Enosh in Genesis chapter 5 verse 6, where it says, "When Seth had lived 105 years, he became the father of Enosh." Enosh's birth was more than just the continuation of a family line. It marked the beginning of a new spiritual chapter. Genesis chapter 4 verse 26 tells us that during Enosh's time, people began to call on the name of the Lord. Azura's role in giving birth to Enosh ties her to this renewed devotion to God. The line of Seth is incredibly important because it leads directly to Noah, who would later become the key figure in God's plan to save humanity from the flood. Without Azura, this lineage wouldn't exist. She may be a lesser-known figure, but her impact is monumental. She represents the bridge between the old world of Adam and Eve and the future generations that would follow. Awan and Azura's stories show us that while their names may not be mentioned in the Bible, their contributions to God's plan were crucial. These women lived through unimaginable pain, Awan as the wife of a murderer and Azura as the widow of Abel, only to marry her brother Seth and continue humanity's righteous line. Their lives were filled with complexity, grief, and purpose. The stories of Adam and Eve's daughters remind us that God's plan often unfolds in ways we don't always see or understand. These women, hidden in the pages of history, played vital roles in shaping the world we live in today. How many other stories have we overlooked simply because they weren't told in full? What can we learn from these untold lives about the role we each play in God's unfolding plan? Isn't it amazing how the story of Adam and Eve reveals so many layers about who we are and where we come from? There's always something new to uncover in the Bible, something that deepens our understanding of God's plan for humanity. If you found this journey through the hidden lives of Adam and Eve's daughters fascinating, there's so much more waiting to be discovered. We dive into these mysteries regularly, and each time it opens up more insight into the Scriptures. So if you're eager to continue uncovering these powerful truths, stay connected with us. Hit the subscribe button so you never miss the chance to explore the Bible in ways you've never thought of before. There's so much more to learn, and we'd love for you to join us on this journey. Have you ever thought about how all the different races and ethnic groups came from just two people, Adam and Eve? It sounds impossible, right? But could there be a deeper story hidden in their DNA that explains the diversity of humanity today? According to the Bible, all humanity traces back to Adam and Eve. Genesis chapter 3 verse 20 says, "Eve was the mother of all living." This means that every ethnic group on earth, every race and every culture, finds its origin in this first family. But how could that be possible? Adam and Eve were created by God, and it's believed they were a blend of all genetic traits needed to produce the vast diversity we see today. Their children, both sons and daughters, carried different genetic combinations, contributing to the rise of various ethnicities and races. Science even backs up this idea. The study of mitochondrial DNA, often referred to as mitochondrial Eve, supports the biblical claim that all humans share a common ancestor. This genetic evidence points to a single woman from whom all human life descended, reminding us of the biblical Eve. It's fascinating to think that within the DNA of Adam and Eve, God placed everything needed to create the beauty of diversity we see around the world today. Imagine the daughters of Adam and Eve, each one carrying unique traits that would be passed down through the generations. These daughters and their brothers went on to form the nations and peoples of the earth. Every skin tone, facial feature, and cultural expression finds its roots in this original family. Genesis chapter 5 verse 4 tells us that Adam had other sons and daughters, and from them came the branches of humanity that spread across the earth. God's design for human diversity is intentional. Just as no two people are the same, God crafted every group of people with distinct beauty. The genetic diversity we inherit from Adam and Eve reminds us of how wonderfully complex God's creation truly is. Could it be that our differences are a reflection of God's infinite creativity? The daughters of Adam and Eve may not have been named in the Bible, but their contribution to God's plan was undeniable. In many ways, their stories reflect the lives of countless women throughout history who have faithfully served God in the background, often without recognition. Think of Miriam, the sister of Moses, who played a crucial role in protecting him as a baby and later led the Israelite women in worship after the Red Sea was parted. Or consider the midwives Shiphrah and Puah, who defied Pharaoh's orders and saved Hebrew babies, directly impacting the future of Israel. These women, like the daughters of Adam and Eve, were not always in the spotlight, but their obedience to God had profound effects on His larger plan. Even in the New Testament, we see women like Priscilla, who alongside her husband Aquila, quietly but powerfully taught the gospel and mentored early Christian leaders like Apollos. Or Anna, the prophetess, who dedicated her life to prayer and fasting in the temple, waiting for the coming of the Messiah. These women served faithfully, often unnoticed by the crowds, but fully seen by God. Their stories, like those of Adam and Eve's daughters, show us that faith doesn't always require recognition from the world. Some of the most significant acts of obedience are done quietly, in the background, but they still move God's plan forward. If you've ever felt overlooked or unappreciated in your walk with God, remember the daughters of Adam and Eve, the countless women like Miriam, Shiphrah, Priscilla, and Anna, who played pivotal roles without the praise of others. Just because your story isn't highlighted doesn't mean it isn't vital. God sees you, and your contribution to His plan is just as important, even when it seems small or hidden. As the Bible reminds us in Psalm chapter 139, verse 16, "Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be." God knows your path and values every step you take in faith. Trust that God is working through you, just as He worked through the daughters of Adam and Eve to bring humanity to where we are today. No part of His plan is too small or too hidden. Whether you're leading a family, serving in your church, or quietly ministering to others, God sees your faithfulness, and He is using it for His glory. If this message resonates with you, and if you know someone who could be encouraged by the untold stories of faith in the Bible, we invite you to like this video and share it. Let others discover the powerful lessons we can learn from those who may not have been recognized but played crucial roles in God's story. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. There are so many more untold stories in Scripture waiting to be uncovered together.